Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Springtime Sonnets Godfest. So, as with any Godfest, the decision to roll or not to roll really rests solely upon yourself and your monster box, as well as the goals and aspirations you have. Just because a card is good or bad doesn't necessarily mean it will fit perfectly in your monster box, so you have to decide if it is beneficial for yourself. With that being said, the Springtime Sonnets Godfest is quite lackluster. It does come on Friday, and it does feature a unique 4x rates for the featured Pantheons, which may be a first, I think, but they picked somewhat questionable Pantheons that are just really not exciting, to be honest. And the fact that it's only one Pantheon, as well as excluding other Godfest exclusives, makes the whole thing just feel like it's a trap. So, basically, this is an overview of what is featured and what you can expect to roll in this Godfest, and I'll be reviewing all the notable changes and cards as I progress through this video. So, as of my previous rankings for my Godfest reviews now, I have a checkmark system. So, the checkmark system for triple check means that they're basically the best in slot. They do something that no one else can replicate. They're just amazing for the most part, and they're really worth pursuing for almost every single box because it has tremendous value for the most part. Moving down, we have the double checkmark category, and this category basically represents cards that do bring a lot of value to your monster box. However, they're not necessarily the best in slot or not as crucial or vital for certain teams, like endgame teams, as like core subs to own or core, obviously the leader. A great example of this would be Green Odin, who has quite a unique bind clear as well as awakening skill bind clear for 5 turns. Now, this can be obviously replicated by Odin Dragon, but that's a monster point card that cannot be inherited. So this is great niche value that probably I feel that it's starting to have more applications as we move through more dungeons that have these skill awakenings bind resists. Next is single checkmark. Basically, they can be replaced, but they still are valuable for yourself. It may be the card you are missing to complete your team, so obviously keep them around. Question marks usually are luxury-based cards that you don't really need to succeed. They're just nice to have, or they just don't really fit in at this current time frame. A good example is Red Odin, who is a very luxurious skill boost stick with poison, but we now can inherit poisons from, say, Red Tamazo, as well as Neptune or various other poisons. Like, we're getting more options at this point. And then the last category is the X, and the X basically represents the bottom of the barrel. They don't really have much value. It's really situational when you would be able to utilize them. But with that being said, those cards have the most room for growth. And even if it's your first one, you should really keep it around because they might turn out to be amazing. A great example is Light Metatron and her new buffs in Japan, which I will be discussing quite intensely in this article. And then up and down arrows basically means that if a card moves up, you will see them appearing in their new tier with how many brackets or tiers they moved up. The down arrow is the opposite direction. So, for the Pantheons, I have Osiris in double checkmark on day 1, and then the rest of the Pantheon in single. The day 1 Pantheon, I just feel like they're a little frustrating because when they were released, they were not that good, which is surprising because usually when cards debut, they tend to be strong and powerful, but this was not the case. Now, they've gained new evolutions, which does bring more viability to them, but the thing is, they still don't necessarily fit that well on any team outside of Osiris, because Osiris does have double TPA and a single 7 combo awakening, which means he will deal double damage when you achieve 7+ combos. So Wood tends to be right now actually quite combo oriented, so this is actually quite beneficial because Osiris, if you hit a TPA with the 7 combos, will be your hardest hitting sub by far. So that is quite wonderful to have. Whereas Set, Nut, and Nephi they don't really fit in very well at this point in time. Because Nut, while it is powerful, it does not really have a water TPA home to be used on. Nephi is just a little awkward. Again, dark TPAs outside of Dark Athena is the only one, but I don't think Nephi actually has TPAs. Set, again, red, the only combo-based leader is really Shiva, and Shiva is kind of in the middle, I'd say, in terms of endgame potential. But Hathor at least has the most potential for growth, mostly because she has 2 7 combo awakenings, so she will hit incredibly hard, as well as the fact that she does have an interesting leader skill. It will allow you to achieve 2.25 times damage, as well as 36 times attack and 2.25 times recovery for light cards for a varying rainbow activation. Now, if we start gaining more cards with the 7 combo awakening, this will actually start ramping up the damage to very respectable and powerful levels. So that is exciting. So she's kind of on the cusp of being powerful and valuable if we gain more light-based cards with 7 combo awakenings, as well as possibly being used more as a sub if we gain more teams that want to have combos that are light-oriented. On day 2, there is Akala and the Red Wisdom King, which I will never pronounce. And Akala is a powerful leader. She hits incredibly hard. She has defensive multipliers for both health and recovery, so that is very beneficial. And she is a color cross-oriented leader, and the main downsides is that it suffers from lower combo count. Now, her active skill does give you +1, but even +1 may not be enough to overcome certain combo shields. This is most prominent in Colosseum, where there are many combo shields of, like, say, 6, 7, or 8, and it may be challenging to hit that when there is no Skyfall clause. Furthermore, she tends to not be that popular because of that reason, as well as the fact that she is vulnerable to binds, so it may be hard to find friends even though she is powerful. On the other hand, the Red Wisdom King has the potential to achieve spectacular damage, amazing recovery, and has a passive health multiplier at all times. So the Red Wisdom King, they do have a very high skill cap component because you have to hit many combos without Skyfalls, and this can be somewhat circumnavigated if you utilize the new 3 Kingdoms 2 Red Dawn, Brutal Dawn I call him, because he creates a 7x6 board as well as wanting to match Fire and Dark. So that should be very feasible for your team, and it might help you hit that combo threshold requirement while still having modest defensive capabilities. On the other hand, Kundali is just in a little bit of an awkward place right now. Like, he is not as good as Sarasvati, and he's just not tanky enough or durable enough to compete with, like, say, other powerful water leaders like Mary. So he doesn't do anything the best. He's still useful to have. He has a nice active skill. He does give +1 combo count, so he kind of is in the middle. That's why he is kind of in the middle bracket. So it's just kind of waiting for some place to fully utilize him on. And then finally, going to the bottom of the barrel are the 2 last Wisdom Kings, Light and Dark. They just have very niche situational value. They have a damage enhancing component, but it's only 2 times, which is really weak in this meta. So they don't really do anything that great, and I just feel like they really need a buff badly to be viable, because being able to kill resolve bosses is great, but there are so many other ways to overcome this challenge. And this article will be linked in the YouTube description, so you can read, because I did simply just summarize without actually reading that. Now we come to the Godfest exclusive tier list, and basically I update this every single Godfest, so things move around, they go up or down as required, and I basically discuss the notable changes. And all the changes occurred with cards coming into the double checkmark category. First off, we have Kaede being demoted, and then Dark Metatron being promoted, and Light Metatron being promoted. So that is a gigantic promotion for Light Metatron, because she basically went from X to double checkmark overnight because of her new evolution. So perhaps I'm maybe a little bit traumatized by the Sphinx tournament that we just had, because it was a fixed Kaede team, which was a little frustrating to use, and I did play it a lot, so I was honestly just thinking of demoting Kaede the previous Godfest, but I decided to keep her around just a little bit longer. But now that I've at least had first-hand experience playing her, I just know exactly how orb-hungry she is and how frustrating it can be to use her. So the main problem is that she is incredibly orb-hungry, and it's very challenging to deal at least modest amounts of damage, because you require at least a Heart Cross and 2 wood combos. But even at that point, 2 wood combos needs TPAs to really hit higher damage. So you are demanding more orbs than a Heart Cross row team, and that is challenging to utilize. And to achieve your maximum multiplier, you need 9 wood orbs, but the same problem applies of not having enough TPA awakenings, so you need to have even more, and that is problematic. If we compare her to Miru, Miru is a lot easier to activate. A single heart cross is your full multiplier, and if you're the TPA Miru, you need the heart cross, which is 5 hearts, and then 4 light orbs, so much less orb hungry by comparison. Now, some people may jump up and say, hey, she can make a system, but system teams falter in true endgame content because A, you have to play in solo mode, and B, you have to dedicate 4 sub or active slots to that haste active in order to have one every single turn to cycle it. And that only leaves 2 active skill slots for your utility or counters to dungeon mechanics. So you are going to be presented with numerous problems in endgame content when you have to deal with many problematic floors in a row. So that is why system teams tend to falter in this day and age. Maybe it will change in the future, but I highly doubt it will. Next is Dark Metatron, and Dark Metatron's new evolution in Japan transforms her into 2.25 times health, 81 times attack, and 2.25 times recovery when being under 80% health. And just think, with that amount of health, you're probably hitting 70,000 in solo mode, especially if you use the health badge, because now the recovery badge is no longer needed. Now, this dramatically widens her threshold because A, you have a lot of health, and B, it's only under 80%. You don't have to get below 50, so you don't have to micromanage your health as much as before, and this is fantastic because now you can take a single modestly large hit and then blow things up with 81 times damage. That is 81 times damage with rows or TPAs, so you can deal incredible amounts of damage. Furthermore, Dark Metatron has the +7 combo awakening, so she's going to smack things for incredible amounts of damage. It will compensate for the fact she does not have TPAs, so you could very well easily make a TPA dank Metatron team because you can simply hit 7 combos. And it will feel almost like a Dark Athena team, except you have to manage your health. So this is quite exciting for the most part, and maybe she might become even stronger than we think, and she may even move up a tier bracket if she proves stronger in Japan because she was just announced, maybe just released. So other bright aspects is that Durga's active skill has been remade to only reduce your health by 50% while providing 2.25 times attack for 3 turns. So while that's not necessarily a gemstone princess, you have 81 times attack, and being able to reset your health to a reasonable amount without basically running the risk of modest preemptives gives Dark Metatron more options, and I feel like she's going to be very powerful because she gained some utility awakenings. And now, while Dark Metatron was impressive, Light Metatron just is incredible because Light Metatron has been essentially kind of the butt-end joke of pad players for numerous years because she was released, was cool and fun, but then she fell off very quickly. And because she fell off very quickly, and Gung-Ho simply neglected her with very mini buffs that were insignificant, people just kind of laughed and neglected her. I have a 297 Metatron on both my accounts. My mom does as well. We haven't used them for years, and it just is unusual to have her around. However, Gung-Ho has finally maybe heard our cries for a buff, and now she is able to form a 506 times attack leader and 6.25 times recovery for gods. Wow. That went from basically 12.25 times to this. Amazing. Now, while Light Metatron does become a light cross leader, you still have options you have very wide options for team building because you only need light gods, ideally with orb enhances. So, while Light Metatron will never be as powerful as Aizen just because her flat passive multiplier is too low, it's only 6.25 times, so you're not going to kill anything with that kind of multiplier, and a single cross will only yield 56 times damage, so it is somewhat of an orb-hungry leader. However, because your recovery is so strong, you can at least stall out until you have 10 light orbs. And to be honest, I feel that 56 times attack with numerous light orb enhanced awakenings will be sufficient to at least clear most of the earlier floors in Arena 3, so it's going to be exciting to play. Not as fast as Aizen, but she is a 5-star Godfest exclusive, so that is quite amazing. Now, one thing to note is that Light Metatron did suffer from a dramatic loss of recovery and because she became attacker, but as a leader, this is not even a problem because she has 6.25 times recovery. But if you had recovery latents like I do, it's going to be kind of unusual now at this point in time. And one last thing to consider is maybe you can pair with Paimon if you want to have a different kind of damage activation as well as some damage mitigation with a Heart Cross. Now, this is probably going to be inferior for the most part and will most likely be done by players who own Paimon and want to at least pair with a light Metatron, because that way you could run the Bind Immune badge, as that way you'll yield double Bind Immune leaders. So, putting everything all together, this is basically the summarized list for the Godfest, taking into account both days as well as the Godfest exclusives that are featured. So both days are relatively similar, I would say, in terms of what is offered, and it's more so just finding which Godfest exclusives are a little more appealing to you. But with that being said, you should not really be pursuing a 4 times rate for Godfest exclusives, because you're most likely going to have disappointment, and this is also combined with the fact that the Pantheons are disappointing. But with that being said, will presume people will roll, and if you do decide to roll, let me know who you're chasing and what is your rationale or justification for it in the comments below. So hopefully you all have a fantastic day, and happy puzzling. And I guess just one last side note in terms of like health updates. I am currently undergoing my second lidocaine infusion. Maybe that's why I look a little spaced out, because I'm suffering from nausea, dizziness, and fatigue. And right now, I actually do have a cool little bottle that's pumping lidocaine into my system. You can't really see it, but I have a catheter inserted into my abdomen, and it's basically pumping lidocaine into my system. So I get to go home at least this time, and it's less costly, but still expensive. So hopefully it will work. It'll take probably 1 to 2 days time for myself to feel relief, and it probably takes about 20 hours if I never clamp and cut off the flow. So that's basically just a health update, if anyone's wondering, and